Next he says, whoever is incapable of fasting due to old age or chronic illness is to feed one poor person for every day. The amount equivalent for a kafara, or what we could translate as a ransom. And that amount is 1 mud of wheat or a half sa'a of some other staple food. A mud is essentially what can fit in your 2 hands. That's 1 mud of wheat. And a half sa'a is 2 of these. 1 sa'a is what you give for zakat al-fitr, and that's 4 double handfuls, scoops like this. And this is based on Ibn Abbas' explanation, and this is found in Sahih al-Bukhari, of chapter 2, verse number 184. This is Surah al-Baqarah. Allah says what means, and upon those who are able to fast, but with hardship, a ransom as substitute of feeding a poor person each day, which is referring to the elderly who cannot fast. Okay, so if you have elderly family members, while they may be able to fast, it may be with great difficulty. Instead of fasting, this is the substitute, is that they feed one poor person for every day. Or if the person's suffering from a chronic illness, which prevents them from fasting, they're also in this category. Maybe some difficult types of diabetes, etc., where you can't go long without food, then and it's an illness that's not expected they're not expected to recover from. If they're expected to recover, then they break their fast due to the illness, and then they're going to make up the days later. This is talking about people that aren't going to make up the days. All right? He says, anyone suffering from a chronic illness, this is Ibn Qa'id here, this is some of his explanatory work. Anyone suffering from a chronic illness takes the ruling of the elderly. If either are traveling, they are not required to pay the ransom, nor are they obliged to make up the day due to their inability. They're not obliged to pay the ransom because guess what? They're traveling. And travel is a concession for you to break your fast anyway, right? So that concession takes precedence over them being elderly or suffering from a chronic illness, and so they don't have to make up the day because of that illness or that elderly state. And then again, they're not obliged to pay the ransom. It says, it is recommended for the ill who will face harm from it, meaning fasting, and the traveler who is shortening their prayer regardless of difficulty. We don't consider that while traveling. Easy travel, difficult travel. Regardless of the case, it is recommended to break the fast. Based on chapter 2, verse number 185. So whoever among you is ill or on a journey during them, then an equal number of days are to be made up. During them meaning the days of Ramadan. Fasting is disliked in both cases. It's considered makruh. If you're ill and you will face harm. What that means is if you're ill and if you fast, it is going to cause great discomfort. It is going to delay your recovery, or it is going to increase the intensity of your sickness. Those are the measures. If you are not feeling good, you have a little headache, tummy ache, not legitimate enough to break the fast. Something that it will bring about harm or, as I mentioned, delay or increase your sickness. And in that case, it's preferred that you break your fast. You can fast, but it's makruh. The same thing goes for traveling. Intimacy, right, the real deal, is permitted for the ill because they're going to break their fast anyway if it's beneficial or helpful in some way. It's also permitted due to severe epididymitis. And this is a condition that is found only in men, for which the resulting lustfulness cannot be eliminated without intimacy. All right, that's if you're having severe pain and you need to relieve yourself. There is no expiation, and they are not to make up the day, so long as they are not excused due to that, in which case they feed the poor like the elderly. So if they're unable to fast due to this condition, then they're kind of like the elderly or the chronically ill. And so they have to pay the ransom for each day. If a person travels in order to break their fast, both are impermissible. Both what? If they travel to break their fast, they say, you know what, I need a break from Ramadan. 30 days is grueling. 15 days I'm going to take a journey so that we can go have lunch together. Both are impermissible. Both meaning breaking the fast is impermissible and the travel is impermissible. Breaking the fast is impermissible due to the lack of a legitimate excuse. And traveling in this particular case is impermissible due to it serving as the means to commit sin. Breaking your fast in Ramadan intentionally without legitimate excuse is sinful, because fasting in Ramadan is an obligation. And so to not fast is a sin. So if you're going to try and play around, that's basically playing with the concessions in Islam and say, I'm going to travel, then both of them are impermissible. More about travel, he says, a resident who intends to fast, meaning they woke up with the intention they were going to fast, and later travels the same day, is permitted to break the fast during the day, so long as they have surpassed the populated region of their area. It is, however, better not to. So if, for example, in the night you made your intention to fast, and then you woke up, and you're fasting, and then guess what? I got to take a trip. I got to go out of town. And in the middle of the day, you take off. You're permitted to break your fast, but not until you've left the populated region of your area. It means basically you can't break your fast until you've gotten out into the countryside, into the rural area, meaning you've left kind of the city limits, you've gone past the populated area with buildings, homes, etc. Now you're out in the open road. Then, and only then, are you permitted to break your fast. Otherwise, it's best not to break your fast, because you started it, you should complete it. You know, Allah says what means, do not render your deeds void. Right? Do not render your deeds void. Basically, once they've begun, you should fill them. You should see to them all the way to the end. If a pregnant or breastfeeding woman, out of fear for their child only talking about the child now, breaks the fast, they are to make it up. All the days they missed. And the guardian, which would be typically the father, has to feed for every day the fast was broken the amount equivalent to an expiation, one poor person. And we talked about that. The amount that you have to give. If the mother or the wet nurse, because it is possible that you hire out a wet nurse, the mother that's pregnant or she's breastfeeding and she's worried, for example, that if she fasts during her pregnancy, it could harm the baby. And now this has to be legitimate. You know, there has to be some legitimate counsel from medical professionals that are Muslim. They understand fasting and how it works. If you get advice from a non-Muslim doctor, they may not understand Muslims and fasting, the importance of fasting, and the willingness to alter our eating habits. Muslims are typically willing to alter our times for eating, right? The non-Muslim, they eat in the morning when they wake up, in noon when it's lunch, and at supper around 5 or 6 or 7. But because we are people of the faith and we value fasting to the point that, you know, it's sacred, we're going to change our dietary habits. We're going to eat at night. We're going to break our fast after Maghrib. Then we're going to eat later on in the night. Then we're going to eat in the morning. So, you know, some doctors, if they don't understand that, they may be thinking, look, you're just not going to get enough calories and nutrition. You can't fast. I don't know what you're doing. So you need to be able to get medical advice from somebody that understands that and is going to take that into consideration in order to determine whether it's appropriate for a pregnant woman or a breastfeeding woman. So the pregnant woman, obviously, there may be something there. A breastfeeding woman, she may fear that her milk supply will diminish if she fasts, and this is very typical for women. If they don't have a constant intake of calories throughout the day, the milk supply will diminish to the point that it could dry out, and she would be worried for her child's nutrition, and so she could break her fast. And if that's the case, then the guardian has to feed a poor person for every day that the fast is broken, and they also have to make up those days later. This ruling is derived from chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, verse number 184. And upon those who are able to fast, but with hardship, a ransom as substitute of feeding a poor person each day. As reported by Imam Abu Dawud, Ibn Abbas said that this verse serves as a concession which permits the elderly who are capable of fasting to break their fast and feed one poor person per day. It also applies to the pregnant and breastfeeding woman who fear for their children. The next level is, if they fear for themselves or themselves and their child, they are only required to make up without a ransom because they are like the ill in this case. They're not required to pay, but they're required to simply make it up because they fear for themselves. Like there'll be some illness, some hardship that will befall them, and not fearing for someone else, right? So fearing for someone else, it's not strong enough of an excuse to be let loose from the obligation without a ransom. But if you fear for yourself, then you have a concession strong enough that you don't have to pay that ransom. It is also permissible to break the fast if required to save a sacred life. Right? If you need to break your fast for some reason or somehow in order to save somebody from destruction, whether they're burning, fire, drowning, whatever it may be, and you need to break your fast in order to do that, then it's permissible in that case. Then you just have to make it up. It is not permissible for anyone permitted to break their fast during Ramadan to fast another day in its place. Like a makeup day from last Ramadan, or the fulfillment of a vow, etc. So if you're permitted to break your day, the scenario is you're permitted to break a day in Ramadan, like you're traveling, and you say, instead of fasting the day of Ramadan, I'm going to fast a makeup day from last year. Or I took a vow or an oath that I was going to fast the day for the sake of Allah, and instead of fasting this day for Ramadan, because I'm traveling, I'm allowed to break my fast, I'll fast for that oath instead. Right? You cannot allow any other type of fast to supersede the obligatory nature of Ramadan. If you're going to fast, even if you're permitted to break it, it has to be for Ramadan, that particular Ramadan and that day in particular. It says, the fast of whoever intends to fast and subsequently loses their mental faculty or consciousness for the entire day and does not regain it at any point during the day is invalid. Because the legal definition of fasting is abstention with an intention, which is not possible in both cases. Right? You understand that? They intend to fast, meaning the intention happens before the day begins. Before Salat al-Fajr, you intend. And subsequently, they lose their mental faculty or consciousness for the entire day. Meaning, before the fast even began, they were out. Just like that. They went out. The lights went out just like that. And they didn't recover the entire day. That means there was no intention there, and the intention was lost. And so the fast is invalid. It says, but not for the one who intended to fast, meaning before Salat al-Fajr, loses their mental faculty or consciousness, and then recovers during part of the day, be it in the beginning of the day or the end. Right? So if they come to, like around midday or afternoon, before Salat al-Maghrib, they come to, they regain their consciousness or they regain their mental capacity, faculty, the intention was already made, and so they come to with that intention already in place. They have not intended anywhere between then and now to break their fast, so that intention is valid. And therefore, if they continue the remainder of the day fasting, the fast will be valid. He says, or one who sleeps the entire day. The fast is valid. The fast is valid because sleep is considered a normal habit. And sleep typically does not remove all of the person's awareness. It doesn't remove all of the person's awareness completely. So if a person were to make the intention to fast and then fall asleep, and they slept the entire day, obviously they would have missed their prayers, etc., etc. They would have, missed out on the reward, but it would count for them. Okay? The unconscious must make it up in the event that their fast was considered invalid, because in general, unconsciousness does not last a very long time, and so they are still accountable. It's not a great burden. It is not required to make up the days missed due to a loss of mental faculty, so long as that loss of mental faculty was not the result of intoxication. Understand? Intoxication removes mental capacity. And if you were intoxicated, you're not fasting because you don't have the intention to do so. You have to make that up because it's haram. Intoxication is impermissible. But if by natural means or something, some condition, you lost your mental faculty, you're not required to make up the missed days. He says, and this is regarding the intention. This is very important. This is extremely important when it comes to fasting Ramadan. He says, every night, a specific intention, meaning fasting for Ramadan, making it up, fulfilling an oath, or completing an expiation due to the Prophet's words, every action is according to their intentions. So every night before the day begins, there must be a specific intention. I'm fasting for Ramadan. I'm fasting to make up a day in Ramadan. I'm fasting to complete an expiation or to fulfill an oath fast. For every obligatory day of fasting, it must be made because each day is an individual act of worship, and we can see that because one day does not spoil the following day. If you break your fast on one day, it doesn't mean the next day's fast is broken. So basically, this understanding is that each day requires its own intention, as opposed to the intention at the beginning of the month, which is to last you for 30 days. No, each day you have to make an intention. It is not needed to make the intention of obligation because specifying the fast includes the obligatory nature or the voluntary nature of the particular fast. What that means is you don't have to say, I'm going to fast an obligatory fast of Ramadan. I'm going to fast an obligatory fast of an oath. I'm going to fast the obligatory fast of making up Ramadan. That extra part's not needed because guess what? Fasting Ramadan is an obligation. It's included in that. It's much like the prayer. I'm going to pray the obligatory prayer of Dhuhr. Dhuhr is obligatory. It's built in there. So that extra bit of it is not necessary and not required. If someone doubtfully says, I am fasting tomorrow, inshallah, and they mean inshallah like, you know how we typically mean it? Inshallah. Like, yeah, maybe, maybe not. If everything comes together, if the chips fall in my favor, then I'll do it. No. If that's your intention, I'll fast tomorrow, inshallah. Because there's doubt in that, it is not valid. Because the intention has to be certain. Unless you're saying inshallah for the blessings from Allah. Like if you say I'm fasting inshallah, meaning like if Allah allows me to live and blesses me to perform this act that I'm certain I want to do, I'm resolute in my intention, then in that case it's perfectly valid. A voluntary fast intended during the day, even if the intention was made after the zawal, remember the zawal is after the zenith, is valid. Meaning if you delayed your intention until midday, it's valid, based on the statement of Mu'adh ibn Mas'ud, Hudhayfa, and the report of Aisha, this hadith, which is found in the collections of Muslim, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, Ibn Majah, and the collection of Imam Ahmad. All of the heavyweights are there except for Imam al-Bukhari. All of the heavyweights are there, reported this hadith from Aisha. She said that the Prophet ﷺ came to her one day and said, do we have anything? Meaning, do we have anything to eat? She said no. And He said, in that case, I'm fasting. So the intention was what? To eat. But when there was no food, he fasted. That was a voluntary fast. It's permissible to do that. And he also ordered, believe it or not, people to fast the day of Ashura during the daylight hours. And that's a voluntary fast. Fasting of this kind will be rewarded when it is commenced and not the entire duration of the day. So if you begin your fast at midday, you don't get credit for the morning hours. Or if you intend to fast, from Asr prayer onward, or 10 minutes before Salat al-Maghrib, you're going to be rewarded for the amount that you actually do, and it's not going to count for you the whole day. Because fasting is based on an active intention. It says breaking the fast occurs by mere intention. This is different from a person who's eaten or had something to drink. All right, so this voluntary fast issue, it means that you could not have previously done anything that would have broken a fast. Like you can't have breakfast and then go, all right, I'm going to fast for the rest of the day. No. You have your morning coffee, you have your eggs and your omelet, you have your pancakes and French toast, whatever you like. Yeah. And then you say, I'm going to fast the rest of the day. No. If you have the intention to break your fast, only you didn't eat or drink, then it's permissible to make the intention to fast at some point later on. And if you are fasting, you can conclude your fast simply by intending. Say, I'm not going to fast anymore. Just the intention. Like, if there was something to eat, I would eat it right now. Okay? The last part here, he says, it is not valid if someone says, if Ramadan is tomorrow, it's my duty. Meaning I'll do it. Because this intention is not certain. Like, especially in the beginning or the middle of the month. If Ramadan's tomorrow, you got to be certain about it. Unless this is the last day, the 30th. If you have the intention, if Ramadan's tomorrow, then I'll fast, then this is perfectly valid because it's possible that it will not be. And you're basing it on, the foundation of, or the base of the thing is that fasting in Ramadan is